What is a diastasis recti or diastasis recti, depending on where you're from, and can we fix it? So let's dive in and take a look at what the research is showing us and what you can do about this abdominal issue. So what is it? A diastasis is a thinning or a separating of the linea alba. Now, the linea alba is the connective tissue where the two sides of your rectus abdominis meet in the middle. It's also a connection of fascia for the lateral abdominals that wrap around your body on the side as well. So it's where all the abdominals connect in the middle. Some natural stretching and diastasis formation during pregnancy is completely normal. The wrong exercises or movement patterns can make a diastasis worse right after pregnancy and frankly during life, because I see a lot of men with diastasis as well that have never been pregnant. So the wrong loading exercises can make it worse and can create it to begin with. So different variations of diastasis. So you can have just normal narrow where there's like half a finger gap or maybe even a finger gap. And you can have it where it's open below the belly button, it's open above the belly button, or it's open the entire way. Now, how do we check for it? So you place your fingers in this linea alba and you pick up your head and you feel the muscles on either side, this rectus muscle, contract. And the distance between the two rectus muscle bellies is what you're measuring for your diastasis. So I have seen people all the way up to like 10 fingers, okay? So you can have a very large diastasis. I've had women who can stick their whole fist in their belly, in the middle, without any problem. And as a positive note, I have also seen those people heal. So the amount of separation is not dependent on whether or not you're going to heal. So just because you have a large diastasis doesn't mean it won't heal naturally. So don't go ahead and don't immediately write that off. So when we're checking for a diastasis, we're checking for the width between the two rectus bellies, and then we're also checking for the depth. So see how many fingers you can fit between the two sides. And now remember, the distance between the rectus muscles does not necessarily indicate whether or not it will heal on its own naturally without surgery, okay? So there's been some women that have had 10 finger gaps that have been able to heal it naturally, and there's been some women that have had 3 or 4 finger gaps that weren't able to heal their diastasis. So just because you have a wide distance, I don't want you to start panicking and saying, oh no, it's so big, I'm not gonna be able to heal it naturally, okay? So just keep that in mind, so that width distance does not necessarily indicate needing surgery. Okay, the other thing we're checking for is depth here. So how far does your finger sink in? So I've seen women heal that have been able to take their fist and put it all the way down into their abdomen where they feel like I could just keep going to my spine. Okay, so you're not alone there if you're feeling that. So basically, if we can sink in and it goes down and it's squishy, this is telling us that the sides of our abdominal wall are not connecting. Okay, so we really care about that squishiness. If you think about picking up a child or moving something or pulling open a heavy door, we need the sides of our abdominal wall to connect. That matters. Now, does it matter if it's a small gap and you have good loading strategies? It might not matter as much as you think, okay? So a diastasis is nothing to panic about, but it is definitely something that we can work on fixing. So let's take a look at the prevalence and what works and what doesn't. So 60% of women at 6 weeks postpartum had a gap. 32% at 12 months had a gap, okay? So these are just normal women. This is a pretty high percentage. Now, the cool number shows us that 100% of women had a gap at due date, okay? So if you're going to get pregnant, you are going to have a diastasis. But what that shows us is that a significant portion of women recover fully and it closes without them doing anything differently. So that's pretty cool. What exercises are unsafe and can make a diastasis worse? Okay, so I've seen those women that have had like a 1 finger gap at 6 weeks, and then they come back in and they're like, Sarah, oh no, I did this crazy ab class, and then now I have a 4-finger gap and I can't get it to close. So you can definitely make the diastasis worse, especially in the early phases of healing, by doing exercises that are too hard for where you are at right now in life. Okay, so I'm not saying never do these exercises. Oh, that would be ridiculous. But what I am saying is make sure that you are ready for the exercises and that you understand how to load your body correctly to do the exercises correctly. So front loading is something that I like to avoid for the first few weeks, especially of that postpartum healing, until you've checked for your diastasis and you've checked for it in loading. So front planks, push-ups, V-sits, roll downs, rolling like a ball, burpees, pikes on a ball, ab wheel rollouts, crunches, sit-ups. Okay, so all of these direct front loading, where we're directly loading your abs, whether it's on your back doing something like a V-sit, or if it's in the front doing something like a plank, that could potentially be too much load on this front healing fascia. Now the thing is you don't even need to be postpartum, and you don't even need to be newly postpartum. I've seen plenty of men with diastasis just because they have poor loading strategies and they never taught their body how to connect and contract correctly. So we're going to go over what goes into that in a little bit. But I've seen plenty of men with it, and I've seen plenty of men heal, okay? So it's definitely comes down to a lot more than just being pregnant. So other exercises that are unsafe are indirect loading, okay? So this makes it a little bit more complicated. You can't just avoid the direct loading early on. So this is an example of a CrossFitter that I helped heal her diastasis. So you can see here how she's getting some bulging out of the linea alba. So that linea alba runs up the front. You can see how she's getting bulging out of that linea alba. Now, when you check your diastasis and you pick your head up, some women create a lot of pressure in their abdomen, so they get a bulging in that center line, and some women decrease pressure in their abdomen when they pick up their head, and they get a sinking in that center line. So no matter whether you get a bulging or you get a sinking, it's still a diastasis, okay? So doing pull-ups, especially kipping pull-ups, so this was it's a little blurry because it was a screenshot from a video of a mid-kipping pull-up. So especially kipping pull-ups can be very, very intense on abdominal loading. Heavy squats, and even regular squats if you really flare your ribs out. Standing arm work like chest flies and press and rows, those can be. All right, so it doesn't necessarily create a bad loading pattern. You just need to check for it and look for it and see how your core is loading. All right, so just be aware. That's all I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to be aware of what's going on when you exercise so that you're not doing more harm to your body. We're helping to support it and we're helping to promote healing. Med ball throws, deadlift, transitions, and yoga. All right, so it's not necessarily, granted, there are some yoga poses that can be very challenging and maybe a little bit too difficult for the level that you're at right now. But I often find it's the transitions in yoga that can really get you, because you're not paying attention closely to what's happening with your abs, and some of those transitions can be pretty tough. Running, swimming, it might or might not be safe. It depends on how you're loading your body and what's happening at your core. So exercises where we transfer energy or effort through our core. And this is where you're just going to want to check, be aware, see what's going on. Work with a good PT if you're not working with one already. They can check you. We know what's going on in that area, okay? So we can just make sure you're safe and you're loading your body correctly. So all I really want to do through this is not promote fear, but promote knowledge and awareness, okay? So that you can just become aware of your body so that we keep you moving forward, not backwards in your recovery progress. So were there specific exercises to help heal diastasis? So I get this question all the time. Sarah, just give me the list of exercises to do. Well, the problem is that is a yes and no. So diastasis is a full body issue. It's how you move, breathe, and load your body. Okay, so I once had this man that I was healing. So sometimes I find postpartum women to be a lot easier for me to get their diastasis to heal than maybe somebody who has had one from childhood that never fully healed as they were growing up. So I once had this man who had a very, very difficult diastasis to heal. And we finally figured out that it was due to his arch strength in his feet, and he was pushing off with his calves and throwing himself forward and overloading his fascia when in his gait cycle. And when we fixed the strength in his arches, after we had fixed his breathing and everything else, his loading, his glutes, that is when his diastasis finally started to heal, finally started to come together, and the squishiness finally started to go away. So it is crazy the stuff that I have seen that contributes to a diastasis. So just because you've done a couple core exercises, just because you've done some heel slides or some bridges and you're like, oh, my diastasis didn't heal, that is you're barely scratching the surface for figuring out what is causing it not to heal, okay? So diastasis can be way more involved with our entire body than we think. Okay, so exercises that are helpful and do work are directed at how you're using your body. So the exercises that I like to get my women doing are promoting awareness, where your body is in space, how it's firing, what muscles you're using, how you're holding your posture when you reach up into a cabinet, what's going on with your core, how you're standing. All right, so getting stronger, but also building that awareness to change into good habit patterns so you don't have to think about it anymore. So that pelvic floor diastasis connection, I hear this all the time. People are like, oh, I need to heal my diastasis to fix my pelvic floor problem. Well, that's not true, but we're going to get to that in a second. Okay, so women who were incontinent had greater synergistic rectus, remember that's the six-pack muscle that runs up the front, than women who are continent. Okay, so we know from another study that women who leak also have stronger external obliques. All right, so basically what this is telling us is that typical pelvic floor incontinence comes hand in hand with an over-recruitment of certain abdominal muscles. So kind of think about the ones on the top and the ones on the front, and the ones that wrap around the side and come in low, like those lower TAs, just aren't showing up as much, and they aren't showing up as quickly. So you're going to get more of the gripping right underneath the ribs. All right, so stress urinary incontinence, so the leaking, might be a symptom of our deep abdominal system coordinating with our pelvic floor. So how our abs coordinate with our pelvic floor. So this is my, thinking through how the pelvic floor connects to diastasis. So if you have an issue with connecting that deep abdominal system, coordinating your abs to make sure they're all firing evenly and like they should, might also cause a diastasis. Because what we know about a diastasis is that it's the rectus abdominal muscle that pulls the gap closer together, but it's the transverse abdominals, those deep abdominals, that help keep it from being squishy. So it could just be that deep inner core system not firing correctly contributes to both a diastasis and both a pelvic floor issue. So this was a really cool study that came out in 2017 showing that women with diastasis were not more likely to have weak pelvic floor muscles. So doing more Kegels does not heal your diastasis. Okay, I'm just going to say that one more time. So doing more Kegels does not heal your diastasis. All right, we need to learn how to use the pelvic floor properly. We need to learn how to fully relax it. We need to learn how to get it to have a full contraction, but after a full lengthening and opening. Okay, so correct movement of the pelvic floor is really important. So these women also were not more likely to have pelvic organ prolapse. All right, so having a diastasis does not mean you're more likely to have pelvic floor issues. And healing your diastasis certainly does not mean you're going to get rid of your pelvic floor issues. And it might actually be quite the opposite. At 6 weeks postpartum, 15.9% of women without a diastasis had pelvic organ prolapse versus only 4% in the group with diastasis. So maybe healing a diastasis fast might increase risk of POP. All right, I'm super speculating here, which is not what you want to do with data and studies, okay? But all I'm trying to get across to you is your diastasis is not necessarily causing your pelvic floor issues. So if you have pelvic floor issues, you need to address the pelvic floor, okay? Creating more tension in your abs. And I've definitely seen women who have tried to close their gap doing some popular exercises and programs and have ended up with pelvic organ prolapse, okay? I've had more than one. I've gotten that email more than once, okay? So just know that correlation is not there, and I'm not sure where that got started around the internet. So it could be that those who reestablish intra-abdominal pressure quickly postpartum before their pelvic floor had a chance to heal and coordinate with their diaphragm might be at greater risk for pelvic organ prolapse. So just keeping that in mind, this is a system that needs to work together. Okay, it needs to coordinate. It needs to work together for it to be happy. And it's not necessarily about more, and it is about training it to work like it's supposed to. Diastasis and back pain. So we've heard this a lot. Oh, you have diastasis that's causing your back pain. Well, leave it to a study to prove that's not true. Okay, so diastasis was not associated with back pain. But women with diastasis often report back pain. just not every time or every one. So if 80% of people with back pain at some point in their life, if 80% of people have back pain at some point in their life, it's safe to say that it's just a common complaint. So a lot of people just have back pain. So that's the difference between correlation and causation. All right, now the thing is that the diastasis is showing us that your core might not be transferring energy well. But what's causing the diastasis to not heal? All right, is it breathing? Is it posture? Is it how you're loading? Is it how, is it how you're standing? Is it how you're moving through life? What is causing it not to heal? And the same factors, like not having a great breath, not having good back body expansion of your diaphragm. All right, so that not having great back body expansion of your diaphragm is what I see it as one of the causes of back pain. Okay, but that can also be a cause of healing a diastasis. I've reestablished back body expansion of the diaphragm in a lot of women and seen spontaneous diastasis healing. So it can be really cool. So that's where we're looking at things that are associated but not necessarily causes. So one more cool thing that came from the study is weight gain, baby's birth weight, and abdominal circumference were irrelevant for having a diastasis at 6 months. Okay, so just because if you're pregnant now, just because if you're like, wow, my belly's so big, it's never going to heal, that's not necessarily true. Okay, so we're looking more at maybe it's genetics, okay, that's causing that fascia not to heal. So if you have some people heal better. Some people have keloid scarring. So when they have surgery or they get something cut and they get a scar, their scar doesn't heal well. And that is a genetic factor. Okay, so there's so many things that go into this and so many things that have to happen for the system to align. And one of those is genetics. Okay, so we are not discounting genetics in this as being a cause for diastasis that will not heal. So what are some things that I've seen to help a diastasis? So first, before we go over this list, I just want to mention that sometimes women need surgery. Sometimes we do everything we can. We fix our breathing, we fix our posture, we get this whole list done, and the gap is still not closing. It's still sinking. It's still wide. And then those are the women that need to have surgery. Now, my caution is if you rush into surgery before fixing how your body is loading, before fixing your breathing and your abdominal wall, as far as coordination of muscles go. So if you rush into surgery before fixing that, I've seen people later for lots of pain in other parts of their body, and I can see them pulling at the repair site. All right, so I can see those poor loading strategies. The surgery doesn't change the poor loading strategies. Okay, so that's what I want to get across. You still need to find a great PT and take care of your body and fix how your body is moving and loading, even if you do end up having the surgery for it, because that's going to be what matters for the rest of your life. Okay, feeling great, feeling good, and having a body that is happy and healthy and free of aches and pains. Okay, so back to this list. We're going to fix breathing. Okay, so not a shallow breath, so breathing that doesn't go up into your neck and shoulders, but not all belly. Okay, I really hate all belly breathing. All right, it's not a good thing. Okay, so you need to be in the middle. You need a great 360 breath that expands your ribs to the side, and you get a little bit of belly, side, and back expansion, and also a little bit of chest. Okay, so the system needs to expand air and pressure all the way around our big abdominal chest canister. Okay, not just our belly coming out for this big inhale. All right, we need to fix posture, keeping ribs stacked over the pelvis. Stop hanging forward into your hips. Stop clenching glutes. Do exercises that support great alignment, that create strong glutes, a strong core, and pelvic floor, but do exercises that support muscle balance as well. So it's not all about being stronger, okay? So what we've talked about here about balance between those external obliques and your rectus and your TAs, those deep transverse abdominals. So you need balance within your muscles. It's not just get stronger, stronger, stronger. It's about being balanced as well, okay? And then like I mentioned with that man that I saw with diastasis, it was very difficult to heal. He had an arch strength issue. So looking from your head posture to your scapula strength, the muscles that insert on your scapula, those posture muscles, when you think about it that way. Your serratus, all right? I know I'm just throwing muscles at you and you're like, what the heck, Sarah? I've never heard of these muscles. But what I'm saying is that it's really important to have a great, strong, balanced body when we look at how it works as a system and how it looks as a whole. And that's going to take some work and it's going to take some effort, but you'll feel great the rest of your life. So it's a huge win. Neck pain will be gone. Back pain will be gone. Hip flexors will feel loose. You'll feel awesome. You'll feel like running and playing and doing things, and you'll feel great. And so I think that's worth it. It's worth the work. All right, so let's take a look at a couple posture alignment pictures to help with some of the people that I've seen for healing a diastasis. Okay, so her diastasis was not healing. And I'm like, okay, stand for me. Show me how you normally stand. And this is how she normally stood. Do you see how she's hanging forward in her hips? And then when I said, okay, I want you to think about lifting your pubic bone just a little bit, shifting your hips backwards, and pulling up through the crown of her head. So I actually had her pull her hair. And you can see now how her rib cage is stacked over her pelvis. Okay, and with this great alignment, then she just had to practice it during the day. Her diastasis is healed. Okay, so if you stand around at the park, in the kitchen, all right, you're washing dishes, or you're stirring something on the stove, or you're chopping something, or you're standing in line waiting, and you're hanging forward on your hips, that is going to create this stress all day long on your diastasis. And your 20-minute exercise routine where you're doing, whatever exercises for your core are not going to be able to combat that poor standing posture all day. So just really keep that in mind. All right, what am I talking about when I say lift from the pubic bone to support the spine versus drawing in? I really hate the belly button drawing in. It's awful. We should all stop drawing in our belly buttons. Okay, so this was a chronic belly button drawer inner. Okay, so when I asked her to come up tall, she's getting ready to do a squat and stack her ribs over her pelvis. She drew her belly button in, and this created that lower belly pooch. She had a diastasis that didn't want to heal. She had heaviness in her pelvic floor. So you can see how that creates a cinch in the system. Now, this was someone else I was working with for healing her diastasis, and you can see how I got her to shift her weight back. She's hanging forward in her hips. I got her to shift her weight back, pull through the crown of her head, and we had a little bit of a lift of that pubic bone. So when we lifted that pubic bone a little bit, it turned on those deep TAs, supported her abdominal wall, but still allowed for movement for breathing, and she's not drawing in her belly button. So there's a big difference between holding that in all day and having a little bit of abdominal support for great posture to support our spine. So if we just hang forward on our hips, letting our hips fall, letting our rib cage come out, that's going to create a lot of stress out here, as will clenching your glutes and tucking your bottom under. So you can see how with her belly button coming in, she clenched those glutes and tucked them under, and that's creating a lot of stress on her system. Okay, so these are two kind of opposite postures, but you can see how both of them would create problems with healing. And what I see most is that what you do all day matters more than the few exercises you do. How you hold your body, how you use it, and your exercises should change how you're using your body during the day. That's the whole point of exercise, is to make us better at life. It's not to do the exercises. All right, so if your exercises aren't making you better at life, get different exercises. Okay, last one. So one of the things that I see is that locked knees, so the hyperextended knees. So when you hang forward on your posture, you are stressing the front of that abdominal wall. And one thing to check is knees. So I want you to think about shifting your hips back, coming up tall, and letting your knees stay straight and unlocked, but not bent. So really check those knees. So are you letting those knees hyperextend back, or are you keeping your ankle in line with your knee, in line with your hip? Okay, so check this with your posture and try not to stand forward in your pelvis. And I think by just analyzing your posture, you will come a long way. Thanks for joining me for this talk. I am Dr. Sarah Ellis Duval, physical therapist and owner of Core Exercise Solutions, and I love helping women learn about their bodies. I want to empower women to know how to fix themselves. So I have a ton of articles. I walk you through how to check a diastasis. I walk you through some good exercises for helping it, all kinds of pelvic floor stuff, back pain. So hop on over to my website if you want to learn more.